Okay, wonderful. Let's get started here. So we're going to just cover a platform which covers both features within the platform and integration. Based on the time we have, we'll tag team Mike Casey and myself, and we'll give you a high-level overview of the platform features, and then Mike will go through the integration piece, and that's how we'll flow through this 45 minutes. We'll have some Q&A opportunities. Obviously, you can ask it in the Q&A panel. Mike, you want to roll to the next slide?
I would, if it would go. Okay.
There you go. Next one. Everybody knows about this one, I guess. Okay, so I think this is basically setting the flow for today. Common platform features, which is what I'll be covering. But before I get there, I just wanted to take some time to define what the platform is. And then once we cover the platform definition, because it's kind of new in the cloud, we are still, people are still grasping what does platform mean, because people are used to acronyms and in the cloud and also on-prem from an Hyperion world. But in the cloud, the platform is consistent across. So we want to take some time to articulate to you what the platform means and then go into the feature sets. Mike, next slide. Okay, so this kind of gives you a good visual one-slide representation of what we mean by the platform, right? So everything in that grayish bluish area is on the top and the bottom area. That all represents pretty much the EPM Cloud Platform, right? So every component within that, whether we are accessing everything we do on the server layer, on the UI layer, on the integration piece, security setup, the cloud infrastructure, all of that represents the platform. Essentially, the applications reside within it, whether they be close or planning domain, profitability, all of that kind of leverage what we do around the core, which is all these pieces which I've identified, whether it's be interaction, user interaction through the web or smart view, through web services, through REST APIs, or through customizations, which you have to end up doing through Groovy layer, the reporting piece, analysis piece. Some of that we'll obviously be covering in a later session today. Al Marciante and myself will be covering on the reporting and analytics pieces, and also on the visualization. So pretty much this one slide gives you a picture of what we mean when we call as EPM Cloud EPM Platform, right? So Mike, you want to go to the next slide? So this further breaks it down into specific pillars, what we mean by infrastructure, what we mean by user interaction, integration and process-based platform components, and then the common components which go beyond those specific pillars, right? So this gives you a sense when you talk about when you're as a customer coming on to cloud or you're using the cloud as it stands today, these are the various components we isolate and identify as platform components. And for folks who are familiar with Customer Connect on the cloud, with EPM being one of the largest audiences and customer bases in the cloud Customer Connect, that's where even when we get feedback from customers, we have Ideas Lab and forums for platform specifically. So any of these areas which you want to give feedback on, when you want to see enhancements around, or interact with other customers around, these are all topics which you would typically go to the EPM Customer Connect Platform Ideas Lab or the platform forum to discuss, right? So that's basically hopefully this gives you a sense of what we mean by the platform. Essentially, at the bottom here, I kind of summarize that it's basically every common component, whether it be technical or functional, which is used across all of the business processes, whether it be close, planning, tax, etc. Right? So next slide, Mike. So again, with the new SKU launched last year, we kind of simplified the whole process of coming on board into the cloud for customers coming from on-prem or for new customers coming on into the cloud. Essentially, there's just two SKUs we kind of have for customers, right? The standard Cloud EPM SKU, which gives you the core essentials of planning, consolidation, account reconciliation, and narrative reporting. And then we have the Enterprise Cloud EPM. So if you notice that the whole acronym sets, which we used to have, which separate services, is all gone. Basically, it's a simplified service with business processes contained within the services. And you have an extended set of business processes and also additional instances included within the Enterprise EPM Cloud. Planning gets a little more nuanced in this definition, and I'll cover that in the next slide. But if you notice here, there's a lot of value in going to the enterprise EPM cloud, even if you're coming in from on-prem. That's where typically the migrations happen into, right? So, for example, there's a lot of customers moving in from HFM into the financial close. For planning, the migration is a natural fit coming into the custom applications. You can also have additional options of deployment with modules and freeform, which we'll touch on in today's session, and also in the planning session, which Mark Seawald and Mark Rinaldi are doing, and also in the reporting and analysis session, which later today I'm doing with Al Marciante. Okay, so the important point is the last bullet point. That puts for on-prem customers concerned about spinning off their own instances. This is available. Additional instances are included. So Enterprise Cloud EPM is a go-to place for if you're coming in from on-prem. It's a natural migration with multiple instances to the extent you need it. Okay, so next slide, Mike. So I kind of drew this visual out so you get a picture from a visual perspective what we mean in planning, right? Planning gets a little bit nuanced when you come in. We talk in the past acronym language, we used to talk about PBCS and EPBCS, and now with the simplification of the new SKUs, you get a visual. I mean, this, if you think about standard, is basically out of the box is where you're really tuned towards a single application construct. You want Oracle to deliver most of what you need. You are leveraging most of what Oracle delivers, and you are doing fairly little customizations around the edges, but most of it you want to be up and running fast, and you think the out-of-the-box modules make sense for you. The enterprise is if you think about it in the car analogy, you can stay on road, which is the modules app type. If you want to go off-road, you get the custom where you get to customize whatever you want because you get those 6 BSO, ASO cubes, and you can create multiple applications across these different app types, right? So if you want to have some app types to be module-based because you think that you can leverage what Oracle provides and get up and running quickly, then that one application or a couple of applications can be module-driven. And others which have more industry-specific needs and customizations which you need to do, those can be custom app types. And then if you want to go full freeform, which is more Essbase type, which is, we'll talk about that more in the afternoon session. But just to give you a sense, if you want to move your Essbase reporting cubes there, if you want to create from scratch Excel-based applications, we can create from Excel. You can define your cube dimensions are totally up to you to define. We don't put any required dimensions in there. So that's like taking it to even further levels of customization where everything in the cube is decided by you, not by Oracle. So you give you those 3 options. One of the beauties of this new SKU definition is from an implementation standpoint, it puts the onus on you from a partner and customer standpoint to make those decisions. Oracle is out of the picture at that point. You, as a designing requirement, you decide which ones will be a best fit for your app creation process. So that's something which you and the implementation designer can take time to decide which one is a best fit for your use cases. And you can commingle, you can combine these. So that's basically the planning. It gets a little nuanced, so I wanted to dive into, hopefully this visual gives you a sense of what capabilities are. Next slide, Mike. I do want to talk about Connection Manager because this is something which is inherent within the EPM Cloud Platform. It's extremely powerful, but it doesn't get talked about much in the sales cycles, in our sales cycles, or in customer presentations. But it's the heart of everything, right? Because in EPM, we allow you to spread your application definitions across the enterprise. And those definitions don't need to adhere to a common chart of account structure. You could be doing sales planning and HR-based planning. You could be doing financial planning. You could be in operational planning in terms of demand forecasting or supply chain forecasting. All of that, when you're doing an EPM, they don't have to adhere to a common set of structures. And that's where the whole idea of multiple business processes deployed independent of each other, but still can connect to each other. which means that the finance person can belong to that other LOB application definition or instance definition and still interact with it. So we can build a commingled UI layer, which is so you can marry all the constructs together without the end user having any notion of these being independent. The independence is necessary or may be necessary based on your metadata management. We have customers who are using different applications based on their regional definitions of metadata. Some LOBs have different definitions. So all of those reasons are why customers deploy specific separate instances, and they can all be brought together through the connection manager, which unifies that presentation layer on the web and also in SmartView. So we have very good constructs like clusters, cards, tabs, and the shared connections in SmartView. Those really make your whole interaction process very unified and still allow you to have that independence at that line of business level to own your applications, to own your metadata, and to still be independent and still work interactively across the enterprise. So that's really something you need to take away from Connection Manager, which obviously it doesn't come front end into any interface, so people don't refer to it much, but hopefully this conveyed to you the importance of that in the back end. And it's also, if you notice that the screenshot there, you can also make connections to outside web services and outside services. So we use that quite a bit in Groovy, for example. You can make connections to other web services and through this connection manager, and then work through those interactions within your EPM platform itself. Next slide, Mike. So let's touch on a couple of key platform features, more from a based on the interest of time. I've kind of laid it out in the next slide, Mike. Kind of laid out in the 3-column roadmap section, right? So I want to, we won't have time to go through each one of these in detail in this session, but hopefully this gives you a good overall sense. And I have a couple of more slides which touches on some of the topics here. But the first column, basically everything which we have delivered as of this month, right? So a lot of good interaction here with the direct connection with OSC. You have now the capability to have EPM OSC interaction with OSC dashboards directly leveraging data. You don't have to move data anywhere. You can leverage EPM data residing in EPM SaaS Cloud through OSC Direct Connect. Freeform applications, a lot of adoption there, moving in from Essbase on-prem through direct LCM or OTL migration, or now we just added in the last month Freeform from Excel, so you can create new applications based on your Excel models. And FlexForm has been very powerful with a lot of customers who are adopting it for that Excel-based interaction of sorting and filtering and copy and pasting on a form, which was not possible. So a lot of things we have delivered, and I'll touch on the auto predict part of it in the next slide. But for now, if you notice the first column, pretty much every month we're delivering. And this is basically a summarized high-level version. But if you read the release notes, there's things coming every month, which makes the cloud really a good value proposition. So jumping on to people typically are more interested in what's in the middle column is really about, what are the stuff we are working on, right? So I want to touch on a few things here, and like the web ad hoc is a big area which we are investing in, and I'll talk more in detail on that in the session later this afternoon. But that's really bringing forth the grid-based technology enhancements we are doing. The innovations around faster, snappier grids across the board within EPM, whether you're using planning, whether you're using financial close or tax, all of those grids are going to take a big leap in the next coming months with web ad hoc. And then we'll be enhancing that over to the forms also. The report designer is getting a revamp. If folks are familiar with FR, that is getting a new look and feel in the next couple of months with incorporation of the MR, which is management reporting, which was part of the EPRCS, enterprise reporting cloud service, but that's being brought into your application definition so that you have a totally new look and feel in your designer and a lot of new capabilities introduced within your reports. So FR is in a sense going to get a new look and feel in the next couple of months, and then you will have a natural ability to migrate those over from FR into those new reporting constructs. And now we'll cover that in this afternoon session. Cell level security, it's been a age-old requirement from planning that's coming pretty soon and can be leveraged across all the business processes, whether they be close, tax, planning. They can all leverage that. That's coming in the next couple of months too, so that you can have not just the 4-dimensional security which we currently have, but take it down to the cell level. A lot of updates happening on the IPM insights. I think we are covering and touching on this in the planning section. But that's again the insight dashboard, so that you can actually doing forecast, you can get an insight of your numbers in terms of how those were brought to forth. So getting some machine learning into that process is something which we will introduce with the IPM Insight dashboard. And that kind of picks up from the auto predict, which we already introduced. And I'll touch on the auto predict in the next slide. But a lot of, if you notice here, a lot of things, and I'll touch on a few items in the next couple of slides. So hopefully this gives you a sense of things we're working on, and not to be left out on the smart view side, especially with freeform being introduced. The last 2 items in that middle column, the smart view member, multi-member zoom in, and the member alias display in separate columns. Those were very frequently asked, still leftover items, which we are adding in the next couple of months. So a lot of new changes coming in. Next slide, Mike, so I can touch on a couple of key enhancements you should be either seeing today and leveraging, or upcoming in fairly soon. Auto predict, for folks who have not heard it, I have done a customer connect session. If you're already cloud customer, you should be able to watch that session. So in a gist of it, what it does is basically time series forecasting. We take data from your historical data set, either in the same cube or a different cube, and then run the predictions through our various prediction methods, which we have about 13 of them, and then identify the best fit to get you the numbers in your forecast or your prediction scenarios, right? So you can define your, what is the scenario and version combination you write this to, and then we will write that to that based on your historical time series, and then running it through our predictions. So that's really a pretty cool way to do some seeded forecasting, for example, right? So you don't want your users to start from scratch. You want them to get a sense of where they stand based on their history. So time series prediction is very useful there to see the forecast and then let users change based on their seasonality and their current assumptions, any changes, so they don't start from scratch their forecasting. Another way to use it is to run comparisons against prediction. This is useful for identifying situations where there is sandbagging involved, or when you want to plan for high-level variance use cases. So quickly you can run through these predictions, populate your prediction scenario, compare that against your forecast, and then use all the capabilities available within Groovy scripting and the data validation which the platform provides to basically decide whether you want to allow the user to save a form, for example, or you want to create a variance report based on that. So a lot of those capabilities become inherent with auto prediction. You can leverage this as a batch job, run ahead of time before your forecast cycle starts, so that when people come in, they already know where they stand. So it really helps a lot. Auto predict, we already have a couple of customers currently starting to do POCs and do early implementations on this, and it's been pretty useful for customers in various scenarios, especially in this COVID timeframe. They are using, because you can tailor your history based on your use case, right? For example, you can take just your last 6 months and predict out the next 2 months, for example. That really gives you a more COVID-specific forecasting process using time series data, which is most relevant rather than all of history. So a lot of use cases here. Take a look at the presentation, which we have shared in Customer Connect, to get a sense of what are the use cases you can solve and how you would use it. We do that demo also there. Next slide, Mike. So this is basically showing the Redwood theme. This is a new theme. You must have seen this if you go to oracle.com and any pages within Oracle. We are introducing more of a, we've taken away those red banners and the red colors and introducing the new theme, which is more nuanced, and we call it Redwood internally. And that's, you're going to see this across the board in other applications as well within Oracle. You must have already seen it in some of the ERP applications if you're using it. We are introducing this new theme within EPM. Actually this coming month in November and in December for Enterprise Data Management Cloud Service. All others will essentially see it within November. So this is just an additional theme.
Shankar?
Mike, I think I lost your share. I think
okay,
I lost your share. Okay, there you go. So this gives you a sense of, you know, what are the things we are enhancing in the future, right? So Redwood theme is where we will be putting in a lot of new enhancements going forward. So take a look at this as it comes through in November, and we're going to make more changes in this as we move forward. So next slide, Mike. So dynamic tabs, it's kind of, I'll try my best to kind of relay this. It's visually, hopefully you can see those visuals clearly, the two screenshots I put there. This is solving a multitasking usability problem, right? So essentially allows you to interact with multiple artifacts or objects side by side. So if you're opening something, let's say for a dashboard, and you want to look at the dashboard, you want to start working through some numbers. At the same time, you see some, you want to look at a report which has a variance. So you can keep your dashboard alive, open up another tab with a report on it, and then look at the report numbers and use that to influence your dashboard. For example, another use case might be you want to edit your form. You're an admin, you're a power user, you want to edit your form, you look at it in runtime, you think that you want to edit your member formula or you want to edit the form itself, immediately be able to open that specific form definition on another tab and be able to edit it. So this gives you a sense of, you know, the things which we are allowing you to tag team together and the side-by-side tabs and be able to open multiple tabs alongside each other so that you can work through multiple artifacts side by side, because that's the way people expect to be able to interact with multiple objects rather than having to close one to open another. So this really solves that usability problem, which kind of sounds, used to sound trivial, but as we saw customers bring it up more, and this became a big issue which we wanted to solve. So that's what we're doing with these Dynamics tabs, which is again coming in the next 6 months timeframe. Next slide, Mike. So some of the other platform innovations we are working towards, again, so the dimension editor is getting a lot of improvements in terms of speed and accessibility. A lot of work going on in the machine learning space, AutoML, importing machine models, PMML files from data lakes and other data science labs which customers have, and being able to take those models and predict out. So we started with auto prediction, which is more time series focused, but AutoML allows you to take any of your data science models which you might have within your company. Many of the larger companies within EPM are already doing this. So this facilitates them to bring their, you know, what we call the PMML file, and then build out, use those models to predict out your EPM forecast, especially within planning here, right? Granular role definition essentially is something which a lot of customers in the cloud have been asking over the last 6 to 7 years since we launched it. Is basically bringing that, allowing many of those admin functionalities to be quasi-admin, which means you want to assign things which only an admin can do to somebody who's not an admin, but only by specific definition. But for example, somebody to manage certain dimensions, or somebody to manage forms beyond the admin. So things which are very admin-centric and kept behind the scenes, So a lot of customers have pointed out to us that they want to granularize that definition, allow the flexibility to define who gets to do what in those specific admin functionalities. Open dimensional approval essentially talks about, I think I have a screen there which actually shows you some use cases there where currently, especially this applies to planning customers. Your entity, version, and scenario drives your approval. This allows you to flex those dimensions to be beyond those, which means that you can have up to 6 dimensions based approval hierarchies so that you can define, for example, an entity hierarchy, which is purely based on your line of business, your product, and your period. And then your secondary dimension can be account, for example, right? So those are kind of examples I give you of that really flexes your approvals much more. To some extent, this is possible in close today because you can have year-end period as your additional drop-down dimensions within approvals. We're extending that to planning and making it more flexible, especially with freeform coming in where you can have any kind of dimensions you need. So approvals to be working with freeform where you may not have a scenario or version dimension or even a separate period and year dimension, then it allows this approvals to be used in those use cases. There's a lot of changes coming, and we keep improving on the REST and Groovy layers as customers try to leverage the best of Groovy and REST. So I kind of listed out those items in here. So I don't want to labor too much on those bullet points, but folks who know Groovy and REST API kind of know this. Next slide, Mike. I think this is wraps up on the platform innovation side. So one last, I won't spend too much time on this, but basically data maps is very popular. Few items on the roadmap here. Cross data map push is coming in the first half of 2021, and also sourcing from reporting ASO cubes into the BSO cubes and member to member, which we have for strategic modeling, but going across cubes. So those are things which we are looking to do. With that, I think I want to hand it off to Mike to take you through the rest of the slides here.
All right, great. Thanks, Shankar. While I'm doing that, will you go address some of the Q&A and see if that's something that we can address while I'm talking, and then we'll try to answer questions towards the end. Sure. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks, Shankar. One more thing I want to talk about really at the platform level is, as a company, we are picking up some of the newer technologies, and one of those is the digital assistant. You may know it by the prior name, which is the chatbot. So that's something that we are picking up in EPM to give you a natural language interface to interact with the applications and your data. And so you can think of it as a way to do things where you can interrogate your data, you can perform simple actions. And then as we move into more enhanced releases, we can do things that are a little more intelligent, a little more sophisticated, going through natural language processing, where we can do some intelligent queries. And then ultimately, we want to do some more of these intelligent actions. So, I tend to think of it as, if you remember Iron Man and Jarvis, we want to get to Jarvis at some point, where you can interrogate the data and it's an interactive and intelligent conversation between you and your data. So at first, we're going to start with some of these more simple things and then move into more of these more sophisticated conversations between you and your data. In terms of the release, we're trying to get a release out at the end of this year or early next year, and the focus is going to be on consolidations and account recs, and it will be the web channel only. The digital assistant supports multiple channels like Slack and Microsoft Teams and mobile, and we're really going to try to focus on those in our second release along with planning. You do need to have a digital assistant cloud service or platform subscription. So if you've got it with some other Oracle product like Oracle ERP, then you can use our content for free. If not, then you do need to have a subscription. But our digital assistant skills are provided to you at no charge as long as you do have a license or subscription for Oracle Digital Assistant in some form. And it shows up as an icon on your screen, and you basically, you launch it, and then you can begin to have these conversations between you and your EPM instances. So it's pretty neat. It's going to start out fairly basic, and then we're going to move into more sophisticated interactions between you and your data. All right, now we get into integration. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, I give a quick overview, which is we really talk about data as financial data quality, not just ETL. So it's more than ETL, and it combines any number of factors. In fact, I call them 4. So there's always the task to go collect and transform your data. In many cases, you've got data from multiple systems that you've got to collect, and you've got to transform it so that it can be consumed easily by your EPM application. You want to have a workflow. A lot of times, before you use something like financial data quality, you would run jobs on their own. Nothing was connected. There was no workflow. You didn't know if things failed. You wouldn't be able to notify people. You wouldn't be able to go back and understand what failed and where it failed and why it failed. So really, you want to be able to manage the whole data integration and data quality through a workflow process. And then once you set up your workflow and your interfaces, you want to be able to run those as repeatable processes. So set it up once, and then you run it forever. So that's the idea, which is you can do it once, and then you have a defined process that is always run the same way every time. And then when you're done, you want to be able to audit what you've done in case there are problems, in case you want to investigate data. You need to have these audit trails. You want to be able to drill through. You want to have a 360-degree view of your data in EPM as well as where that data came from. So these 4 factors together is what we define as financial data quality. And we deliver this confidence with our data management tool and our newer data integration tool, which is really our cloud-based version of the on-premises financial data quality management enterprise edition. So really, it's the same great tool that you use on-prem, which is now in the cloud, the feature in every one of the EPM business processes. Another nice thing that we just released, which is the integration agent. So in the past, it was hard to connect the cloud directly to on-premises sourcing, as well as other third-party cloud applications. So right now, really the view of how we connect into the EPM Cloud is really pretty simple. You've got on-premises systems, you've got third-party cloud, plus you've got other Oracle-branded cloud applications like ERP, HCM, NetSuite, et cetera. So really, we've got pretty much 100% coverage of the ability to pull data from on-premises systems, third-party clouds, and other Oracle other Oracle cloud instances, either through direct integration or through our integration agent, which provides a connectivity between your EPM Cloud and on-premises sources. So in the past, we really had a fairly complicated, diagram of integration, but now it's fairly simplified with the tools that we provide through EPM. And to go more into the EPM integration agent, this was released maybe 6 months ago. And it's important to note because it does give you that connectivity between the EPM Cloud and anything on premises. It's a lightweight footprint. It's similar to EPM Automate. You download it from the cloud, and then it basically provides a connectivity between on-premises databases or anything that you can call with a script and ability to get that data back up into the cloud. We do provide direct extracts for EBS and PeopleSoft that come included with the agent. You can do direct connectivity between an Oracle database or Microsoft SQL Server. And anything else that you need to connect to can be done through a scripting feature that's available in the agent. So if you need to connect to a Snowflake, to Teradata, you can easily do that with the agent. We also give you the ability to drill through using the agent, so you can drill through without a URL. And then we also have the ability to write back. So if you want to pull data out of the cloud and write back on premises, you can do that with the agent. And then people ask, well, why is the agent so important? Well, it really eliminates the need for your on-premises FDMEE instance. So if you want to begin to move everything to the cloud, it gives you that ability to get off of those on-premises tools that provide those on-premises interfaces. Also provides the scripting. And so really, I say it 2 times, is it provides connectivity to on-premises without FDMEE. You can drill using an agent to perform a database query that's presented in dialog in the cloud, or you can still drill through using a URL. So the agent really is the way to begin to move everything that you have into the cloud. Another neat thing that we just released, which is we've got an ERP cloud ERP integration through data management. It allows you to define BI publisher reports in any Oracle Cloud ERP instance that we can service and consume within their Cloud EPM applications. So it gives you a, if there's something that's beyond basically GL balances, you can go create a BA publisher report and use that as an extract. You can go out against AP, AR, fixed assets, procurement, PPM, really anything that's in the Cloud ERP we can now bring into EPM. We're also working on the ability to integrate back to your Cloud ERP instance using the file-based data integration API. So not only can we pull from ERP, but then we'll be able to push it right back into the cloud. These are some of the use cases with the integration, specifically the integration agent. You can pull from Oracle, SQL Server, Teradata, Snowflake. If you've got a third party like Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce, you can call an API using scripting. It's basically, you can call anything you want now with the agent. And then we've also got the write back. With the Cloud ERP adapter, you can pull from accounts payable, accounts recs, you can pull transactions, fixed assets, projects, supply chain. So anything that you can create a BA publisher report on, you can use as an extract for EPM. And then we'll have the write back to the Cloud ERP using the FDDI adapter. And then I say we're 100% complete in terms of coverage right now, but we will continue to do things to make it easier to get your data into and out of all those different sources and targets. One thing we've also done is we're trying to move off the legacy data management UIs into what we're calling data integration. And we've really defined everything as an integration now. In the past, you had import formats and locations and mapping rules, and it was pretty confusing. So we've simplified that with a new UI where you create a source and a target, but you still have all of those components that you had in data management in terms of mapping. So it's the same data model, but we've put a new UI on top of that. And we are working on 100% parity between data integration and data management so that at some point we can turn off data management and then just use the new data integration UI. All the REST APIs are the same. Everything remains the same. It's just a new UI on top of the data management data. Some of the newer features, this is one that people have asked for a long time, customizable views in the workbench. So this is available now in the workbench in the simplified UI. We are working on providing the ability to have customizable views when you drill through down to the drill through landing page. So that's coming up later this year. This is a neat one we have, which is in the past, it was hard to have a user-defined clear definition before you did replace when loading into EPM. So we allow you to provide a fairly defined specific clear definition that you can execute as part of your data load. And this also works when you're loading data back into the GL. So if you want to clear a budget before you load it back into the GL, you can define the clear region that you want to specify so that you clear out exactly the data that you need to clear before you do that replace operation. This one is really neat too, which is we've included enhanced business rule support. So in the past, you could only run a business rule after you ran an integration through data management. We've now added business rule support in multiple events. This is similar to the events we had at FDMEE. So you can run a business rule before or after import, before or after load, and before and after check. So this gives you the ability to perform operations in planning and different steps in the integration process. And the other thing about business rules is you can also write Groovy scripts. So it gives you a way to do some sort of basic scripting as part of the business process and the business workflow as you go through an integration. So that's pretty important. We do intend to provide additional APIs for data management. So we begin to support some of those things that we previously have done with scripting at FDMEE. So watch this feature. This is going to continue to grow specifically for what we do in data integration. And this is really a picture that I show in terms of what the integration looks for all the different components. So to get data in the cloud, you can always load with a file. If you need to transform your data, you run through data management or data integration. You can drill through back to on-premises. Even if you use the file to load, you can drill through back to on-prem using a URL. The integration really replaced FDMEE. You can move data between different EPM instances using data management if you need to do transformation. And then we've also got the ability to connect into other cloud services and also the Cloud ERP. So really, we've got really good coverage for all of the data sources and targets that you need to hook together as part of EPM. And then you can always automate everything with EPM Automate. I think I've got probably 5 more minutes. I'll try to get through it quick. People a lot of times ask me what's the difference between FDMEE and data management. With the release of the integration agent, we pretty much cover everything that we did with on-premises FDMEE. And I think that was one thing that customers had a little bit of hesitation in regards to moving to the cloud, was some of the things that did in FDMEE weren't supported in the cloud. But for the most part, we support everything. Scripting is coming. Now with the business rules and the ability to write Groovy and business rules, you can do a lot of what you had done on premises now through that feature. So we've really moved beyond FDME and really have the way to move all of your on-premises systems into the cloud. This is our roadmap slide. I won't get into the recent highlights of the things we just released. Really what we're working on is we've got an integration with cloud projects that's coming out this year. We're working on a third-party cloud API adapter so that you can call any sort of API to get data from any sort of third party into EPM. And then we're also working on funds checking and funds reserving to really support public sector requirements in planning. We're still working on simplifying the UI. The customization framework for the dual landing page is important. That's coming later this year. And then we want to move more of what we've done in data management to more of the platform features that Shankar had spoken about in terms of common connections and FDBI writebacks. We're also working on some features that will allow us to support a very large amount of data loading into and also exporting out of EPM. And that's quick, and I think I hit my time. Do we have questions, Shankar, we need to answer? Okay, so one here, I'll read it to you. So now with data management in the cloud, we need to convert the Jython scripts to business rules after having to convert them from VB to Jython. It depends. What I tell people about the scripting is it gives you an opportunity to look at what you've done on premises and decide if you still need to do those things in the cloud. A lot of the features that a lot of the things that people did with scripting on premises is because it didn't have features. We've done a lot of things in the cloud in terms of import scripts and expressions. So most of what you've done with import scripts can now be done with expressions. And then other things that you've done, you may want to look at, can you do those with business rules? But really, it should give you a chance to look at what you're doing in scripting to see if you still really need to do scripting in the cloud. Hopefully that answered your question.
Okay, there's no other open question right now, so I think we can wrap it up. If there's any other question, just shout out on the Q&A channel. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up here. There's one more coming in, Mike.
One more question. Let's see. Okay. Maybe it's for you, Shankar. Is there any difference in narrative reporting in standard versus enterprise?
I don't believe so. We can touch on that again in this afternoon's session with the reporting and analysis. I don't think there's anything different there.
Okay. Anything else quickly before we shut it down?
There's some chat. I think we're good, Mike.